So good evening, everyone. Welcome to our live broadcast, November 21st, 2015. Apparently last night's Dhammapada video was too long. I'm told that no one has time to sit through a 47-minute video. And normally, comments like this will go unanswered and undiscussed. And I'm not reading all comments, so please don't expect me to reply to your comments. But I do read the first couple on each video just to make sure the video got uploaded correctly and no one's having problems. And because sometimes the first couple of comments tell me that the audio was no good or was missing or something like this or that. But no, it was too long. And I just thought it interesting to comment because a 47-minute Dhamma talk is usually considered to be too short. So if people are having trouble, and I know this is a thing really, it's true. YouTube actually tells you, no one's going to watch a 47-minute video. You shouldn't upload them. You should upload short videos. When you learn about what YouTube has to say, I mean, they know from experience. I think I've even got a tool that lets me see how many minutes of my video people watch on average. It says out of a 47-minute video, average number of minutes watched, it's probably about 3. I don't know. I don't use the tool, but I can check. But it's a bit of a shame, really, because, as I said, and for good reason, Dhamma talks 47 minutes, that's short. I've given a couple of hour Dhamma, 2-hour Dhamma talk once, I think. After 2 hours, people start to complain a bit. But 2 or 3 hours is not unheard of. 1 hour is a pretty good length for a talk. That's usually what we aim for. Now, I know the Dhammapada videos have been shorter, and some of the videos don't require it, and I'm probably going more in depth and more off track. And so I appreciate that. I will try to stay on track. Maybe a little more on track than before. But, that being said, shouldn't be the length, it should be the content. If the content is objectionable, then that's a problem. Anyway, not a big deal, I just thought it was interesting. We have a quote from the Buddha's last moments. That's actually a really good quote. It's one that Ajahn Tong brings up a lot. Or part of it anyway. Yoko ananda bhikkhuva bhikkhuniva upasakova upasikava dhammanudhamma patipanno viharati samici patipanno anudhammachari sotathagatam sakaroti karunkaroti maneti pujeti. And there's a word that's not normally there. Idang padang sisya potakesun nadisati. This word isn't in all of the versions. Apachyati paramaya pujaya. Which means any monk, female or male, or lay disciple, male or female, who practices the Dhamma in line with the Dhamma or leading to the Dhamma, who dwells practicing the Dhamma in order to attain the Dhamma. Samici patipanno, who practices properly. Anudhammachari, one who fares according to the Dhamma. So tathagatang sakaroti. Such a person does right by the Buddha. Sakaroti. Garung garoti. Makes reverence to the Buddha, makes homage. Maneti. Holds up high. Holds in their mind. Honors. Thinks highly of. Pujeti. Reverences. Apacchiyati. No idea what apacchiyati is. Not in all the versions. Paramaya pujaya, with the highest form of reverence. Tasmatihananda dhammanudhamma patipanna viharisama samiji patipanna anudhammacharino. Therefore, Ananda, you all should dwell practicing the Dhamma in order to attain the Dhamma. Should practice properly, should fare according to the Dhamma. Thus you should train yourselves. So that's, yes, you have that actually in English. So, do we have any questions for tonight?
We do. Thinking about self and non-self, or what is not, I came to the idea that there is just happening. Is this idea of just happening in line with Buddhist teaching, moments of happening, actions, acting upon actions?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that sort of insight is kind of the objectivity poking through. Means you're starting to become more objective. That sounds what it sounds like. Don't hold on to it. That's a raft. That raft changed your mind, so it got you across something. Now throw the raft away and keep going.
Hello, Bhante. Can you talk about body scanning? It should always be categorized as samatha, right? Many people seem to associate practicing mindfulness with doing body scanning, or even associate the term vipassana with body scanning, maybe due to Goenka. The more I have practiced insight meditation, the less I have done body scanning. Should I stop it completely? I've noticed it's easy to get attached to the tranquility. How to think about this and how to talk about it to the people that have the practicing mindfulness equals body scanning view. If one wants to practice vipassana intensively and advance one's understanding of reality, is it counterproductive to do body scanning once in a while, or can it be useful somehow? Sorry for the poor articulation. I'm tired or something. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, well, the word body scanning, I mean, words are really problematic when people have catchphrases or labels for things. Like for example, our technique is often talked about as labeling or noting. Acknowledging was a big one. Acknowledging, but acknowledging is a problematic term. Anyway, a little bit off track. The point being, body scanning, in order to understand it, we really have to break it down and see what you're doing, because body scanning is not, when you say body scanning, it does not immediately mean that it's samatha. No, I don't think that's fair to say. As to whether it is proper meditation and whether it is vipassana, right, the question would be whether it's proper meditation, because vipassana depends on the object. Now, body scanning could be problematic if it deals with a body, like moving through the body. First of all, I'll say there's no reason to suggest that one should practice in this way. I can't think of a single even say the Visuddhimagga passage, which encourages body scanning. There may be, but I can't think of anything that hints at it. I don't even, now maybe Lady Sayadaw says something about this, and maybe it is in the commentary somewhere. But I would imagine that even Lady Sayadaw didn't. I mean, that would be a good question. Did Lady Sayadaw, who was supposed to be the teacher of Goenka, and Lady Sayadaw is usually who they go back to. So the question would be whether Lady Sayadaw or Webu Sayadaw, who I think is another one, a student of Lady Sayadaw, whether these guys talked about body scanning and where they got it from. So I mean, that is something. When there's no long-standing tradition, or you can't bring it back to the Buddha, you can't bring it back to the sort of things that the Buddha taught. If you contrast that with what we do, as I've been pointing out, especially in our study of the Visuddhimagga, there is very strong precedent for this kind of practice. In the Visuddhimagga, it literally, right, it directly explains to practice in this way. This is how you practice meditation. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha himself appears to be, at least subject to interpretation, but the grammar itself supports directly saying to yourself things like walking, walking, or angry, angry, pain, pain, or so on. It's pretty easy to read that into the. Why I'm saying some people deny this. Some people say no, that's not what it says, because it depends what you mean by the grammar. But it literally says "Gachanto va gachamiti vachanati." Gachamiti means I am walking, and ti is a quote, so it is a quote. No, but the verb is pajanati, which means knows clearly. So one knows clearly, quote unquote, I am walking. That coupled with the tradition of how meditation was practiced is a clear indication that what we're doing is not something new or off the wall or far-fetched. Now, body scanning, just as a precursor, I want to say that I don't think it's well supported by the text. Could be wrong, and it'd be interesting to talk to them about that. But that having been said, we shouldn't be so dogmatic as to discard it as a result of that. But as I said, we have a bit of a problem because it may encourage the concept of a body. The other thing it may encourage is self, in the sense of actively seeking out. Now, there's a little bit of that in what we do, but we're careful it's a sensitive subject. It's something that we have to be sensitive to, that we're not actually forcing or seeking. And so we tell you to focus on the stomach rising and falling, and you could argue that pushing yourself to stay with the stomach could be, and it can become, somewhat forceful and based on concepts of control. But we're fairly careful not to let it become that. We say that's where we start, but we're completely open to letting the mind go into what is often called choiceless awareness. It is pretty choiceless. We're not exactly choosing. Even though we do choose the stomach, we do it as a base more than anything. I mean, there's still that potential criticism. And so I think some people would say, well, if you're going to be totally you're going to be sincere about this, it should be completely choiceless. Of course, that's a problem, and that doesn't really work. You can't do that. And so as a result, we do use some control. And I think the biggest argument for either practice, whether it's the body scan or whether it's staying with the stomach rising and falling, is that you need to start from a point of control in order to just get your feet, in order to just get balanced enough to start to see and to see how control breaks down. So it's not exactly control, but there is the potential. And I think a good thing about the body scan is that it's not partial. So the idea is if you scan from head to feet, you're not choosing this part or that part based on your preference. You're not going to certain things and avoiding other things. You're forced to go through the entire body, I think. I've never practiced it. I think they do from head to feet. But that being said, apart from those minor thoughts about it, I don't think about it too much. And probably I shouldn't have said even that much, because it's not our technique, and I don't like to talk about things that don't concern us. But it allowed me to talk about our technique, and I think rather than attack other people's techniques, I would say that about our technique, that it's well represented in the texts, and so that's why we practice this way. Was that everything? There was a lot of question as to what you should do. Should you stop it completely? You should practice one way or the other. If you're practicing our technique, practice our technique. If you're practicing that technique, practice that technique. You shouldn't mix. You shouldn't, because that becomes based on your partiality. Mixing, apart from being confusing, it's also usually based on preference. I like to do this sometimes and that sometimes. So when I feel like doing this, I'll do this. When I feel like doing that, I'll do that. And that's hugely problematic.
How about the idea of talking about this to people who have the body scanning view?
We're not about changing people's views. If they have that view, then power to them. If they're looking to change, then let them change. We're not trying to convince the world of our practice. Usually, if people even want us to convince them, we say, it's too much trouble for me. I mean, that's what sort of the example we get from the Arahants in the texts. For the most part, they would be, teaching you would be too much trouble, is the kind of thing they would say. It's important. It's important not to pander, not to obsess over changing other people. So look at yourself. At that point, you should look at your own thoughts. Do you understand this? Then okay, do it the way you understand it. And then you ask yourself, maybe I'm doing it wrong. And that's what you have to figure out. Everyone should look at their own feet when they walk. Not literally. When we do walking meditation, don't look at your feet. But as the Buddha said, we watch our own path. We don't worry about the footsteps of others.
Question about the meditator list. Excuse me. What does the +1 and the number shown between the two hands indicate? Mine has changed from 5 to 2. Mm-hmm. I'm fairly new to the layout.
I don't think that's possible. Unless you're using the Android app, it does weird things. Don't know how to fix it.
Yeah, the Android app sometimes shows it in green, meaning that you've already clicked on it when you haven't. So that's a little strange.
If you don't move the list, it fixes itself on the next update. But if you scroll up and down, something goes kind of funny because there's something wrong with it. It's got to be fixed. You need someone who's smart.
But the +1 means +1. It means you've done something good, and anumodana.
It's likes. It's likes.
It's likes. It's like a Facebook like. Yeah. So it should. I don't think they can go down, but.
Who knows, huh?
Yeah, technical difficulties. On weekends, I try to practice the 8 precepts. I've noticed strong craving, but there doesn't seem to be any object for the craving. It seems like the mind is just hungry. I can watch this hungry mind for only so long, then I end up feeding it. Is the idea to feed it, but in the most wholesome way possible?
I think by feed it, you're talking sort of a figurative feeding, I hope. Talking about feeding the mind, right? I mean, the best is if you can learn to overcome and let go of it. But yeah, if you're right, so you're trying to keep the 8 precepts, and then you end up breaking the 8 precepts maybe by listening to music or something, or watching a movie or something. I mean, there are ways to do it without breaking the precepts. It would just sort of distract you, but it's kind of beside the point. In the end, you have to learn to overcome it. If you're keeping the 8 precepts, you should keep the 8 precepts. It's only temporary. So you learn, it's teaching you self-control, if nothing else. But it's, I mean, that's part of the reason for keeping the 8 precepts, is to learn about learn about your desires and to have a chance. Because if you constantly have the ability to indulge, to satisfy your desires, you'll never get to see what this desire is like. You'll never really get to understand what desire is. You'll never have a chance to challenge this idea that desire is worth having and that desire is a sign that you should chase after what you're looking for. So as you watch the desire without indulging in it, you're able to see a middle way, a way of just being with desire without acting on it or without repressing it. That's what we're looking for. So what you're talking about is not the idea. The idea is not to feed it. But if you feed it, then just be as mindful as you can. Of course, if you're keeping 8 precepts, you shouldn't feed it.
Hello, Bhante. Could you please tell whether it is true that one has to cycle through the insight knowledges many, many times after third path before actually arriving at fourth path? Or does one only have to get through one more progress of insight cycle after third path to attain fourth path? Thanks.
It only requires one cycle, but that's technically. Realistically, it usually requires many. But there's 2 different cycles. One cycle is only going to be a review, so it's not going to be all 16 stages of knowledge. You can actually only go through the stages of knowledge 4 times. So you're not actually going through all the stages of knowledge, not technically, because it's missing. It's missing one until you reach the next path. But I think that's really a technicality. Every time you go through the knowledges, you reduce your defilements. So they get cut off piece by piece by piece. When you reach a certain point, that's called anagami. And you reach another, and you reach the final point where there's none left, that's arahant.
There is one more. Could you please talk about how an anagami progresses to arahantship? I am at high equanimity after third path. Any advice? I got frustrated after practicing a long time.
Advice. Here's a person with yellow, orange, who hasn't done any meditation with us. Anagamis don't get frustrated. I'm not going to answer your question. If you start meditating with us, I think I'm not going to answer these sorts of questions either. If you want to meditate with us, you should start logging your meditation. Read my booklet, start practicing according to our technique. Start logging your meditation, and if you have questions about your meditation, I'm happy to answer them. But I'm not going to talk about these. It's not something I can verify, and from the sounds of it, there's a misunderstanding of what the anagami is. Sorry.
And with that, we are caught up.
Nobody clicks on people's hands anymore, do they? I used to.
I do sometimes.
There's a lot of them. Click, click, click.
What we don't do very often is up on the top part, click to like questions and comments and things.
Mm-hmm.
I forget to do that.
Okay, that's all then for tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. And good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhante. Good night.